Today we are diving into a stack of reports and notes, all focused on the ongoing legal situation involving Sean Diddy Combs.
That's right. It's a pretty significant story developing.
Yeah.
And the material we're looking at today really highlights just how far the ripples, how far they can extend from these high-profile cases,
Yeah,
drawing in many other notable figures through all sorts of connections.
absolutely. So our mission in this deep dive really is to guide you through these sources, the articles, the research notes, to really understand which other prominent individuals are being mentioned alongside Diddy in this context.
Mhm.
We want to uncover why their names are popping up, what the specific claims or connections are according to this material we have.
Crucially, according to the material.
Exactly. And how these individuals are reportedly reacting and maybe what we can learn about, association and public scrutiny when you're in that kind of spotlight.
It's a look at that complex intersection, isn't it? You got the legal claims, various reports from sources, some named, some unnamed, and then there's the intense power of public perception.
All filtered through these documents we're examining.
Precisely.
Okay, let's unpack the first name that pops up in this context, and it might be one you didn't immediately expect to see. Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah, that was certainly surprising when reviewing the material. The primary basis for his mention, based on the reports we have here, seems to revolve around past association.
Right.
Specifically, his attendance at parties hosted by Diddy years ago.
Right. The sources make particular note of infamous gatherings. They sort of invoke the imagery of those, legendary 90s white parties. And they highlight one very specific detail that's apparently circulating again. A snapshot from 1999.
The photo.
Yeah, it shows a then 24-year-old DiCaprio looking pretty relaxed, smiling, sipping drinks, pictured alongside Diddy and some others.
And this isn't just like an old photo gathering dust in an archive somewhere.
Yeah.
The reports indicate this particular image has resurfaced.
Big time.
It's currently being widely shared and, discussed, especially online.
And that's really where the narrative shifts to public perception, as the sources describe it. The idea being presented is that merely having been present at these kinds of parties, maybe decades ago, is enough fuel for some segments of the public to speculate, to wonder whether you might have witnessed or maybe even participated in questionable activities.
The material directly quotes or paraphrases some of these online reactions just to illustrate this point. You see comments like, birds of the same feathers flock together, which is a clear implication aimed at DiCaprio. Another comment noted is, I know he's terrified right now.
Wow. It's a pretty significant leap in speculation, isn't it?
It really is.
Drawing such strong conclusions based solely on attending a party more than 2 decades ago, it really underscores, as these reports seem to imply, how public opinion can instantly connect individuals.
Right.
And construct these narratives just based on who they were pictured with, especially once one person involved faces serious allegations.
And what's particularly interesting then is how the sources immediately pivot. They describe efforts reportedly being made by DiCaprio, or maybe those close to him, to distance himself from the situation.
They cite a source who spoke to the Daily Mail, offering a very firm, very direct denial. Quote, Leonardo DiCaprio has absolutely nothing to do with any of this. Pretty unequivocal.
Very. And the argument presented by this source, as it's reported here, is quite specific. DiCaprio attended a few parties, yes, back in the early 2000s.
Okay.
But they emphasize he did so like everyone else. It was the thing to do. The source maintains he is absolutely not linked to any alleged bad behavior that has been reported more recently.
The source is also quoted being quite dismissive of the ongoing speculation, saying something like, he has nothing to do with that world, so for anyone to think he'll get dragged into this because of a few old photos is just ridiculous.
Right.
The framing in the reports is that this is a clear attempt by people close to DiCaprio to draw a firm boundary around the current allegations.
And for context, the sources also remind us of a past interaction between them. Diddy himself, in I think it was a 2018 interview with Vogue.
Oh yeah, the 73 questions.
That's the one. He famously called Leo his favorite party guest.
Which, in retrospect, perhaps gives that past association a little more weight in the public imagination now.
Maybe, yeah.
Than maybe it had at the time, or certainly than those close to DiCaprio would prefer right now.
Possibly. However, the material also includes a claim from an insider who pushes back on the idea that all of Diddy's parties were, the same kind of event.
Ah, interesting.
This insider reportedly insists that the parties DiCaprio attended were fundamentally different from the, quote, wild ones described in other accounts.
Like Cassie Ventura's testimony.
Exactly. Like those described by Cassie Ventura, which reportedly involved much darker and more disturbing activities.
So the reports are presenting this distinction, suggesting there were maybe different tiers or types of gatherings. And we see the mentions that the last time DiCaprio was reportedly seen at a Diddy bash was way back in November 2019.
Right, for Diddy's 50th birthday.
So not a recent, ongoing close association, at least according to this material we're looking at.
No. And the sources also delve a bit into DiCaprio's own public image and a reported sensitivity he has around it. They mention his active efforts over the years to move away from that perceived party boy image and focus more on his environmental activism, which he's obviously very known for now.
And the reports link this reported sensitivity about discussing his past to his well-known reputation for dating younger models.
Right.
It seems anything that could potentially tie him back to that earlier, maybe more scrutinized image is something he reportedly wants to avoid.
This whole case, as laid out in these documents, it really makes you think, doesn't it? Why does the public narrative, and maybe even potential legal scrutiny, draw such strong connections based on past associations, sometimes going back decades?
Yeah.
And how do figures like DiCaprio, according to these reports, try to manage that public perception when old photos or just brief mentions suddenly become central to a massive news story?
It really highlights the lasting impact of even casual historical connections in, the digital age we live in.
It underscores how difficult it is for public figures, as these sources suggest, to control their image when serious allegations against an associate emerge. You see this push and pull between the speculation, often fueled by easily shareable old images, and then the strong denials and counter-arguments presented by individuals or their representatives.
Okay, so beyond the unexpected names popping up from, say, old party lists, the sources also delve into figures linked perhaps more directly through past romantic relationships. First up, one of his most famous former partners, Jennifer Lopez.
J-Lo, yeah. The material details their relationship, placing it start towards the end of 1999.
Yeah.
They apparently met on the set of her music video, If You Had My Love.
Right. And they quickly became this huge celebrity power couple, famously walking the red carpet together at the 2000 Grammy Awards, that green dress moment.
That's the one. But the reports highlight that despite all that public glare, the relationship reportedly faced pretty significant challenges behind the scenes. They discuss Lopez's own admitted struggles with Diddy's alleged unfaithfulness during their time together, her feelings of deep distrust, and a sense that she kind of lost herself in the relationship's turmoil.
We even see a quote from her included in the material on this very topic. She said, "It was the first time I was with someone who wasn't faithful. I was totally crying, crazy, and going nuts. It really took my whole life in a tailspin. I never caught him, but I just knew."
Wow. That offers a very personal account, drawn directly from the sources, about the difficulties she reportedly navigated back then.
The reports indicate they eventually broke up towards the end of Valentine's Day in 2001. But interestingly, the material notes that years later, despite that rocky history, they reportedly maintained a degree of respect for each other. They even cite a comment from Diddy calling her one of the great ones. So according to these accounts, some sort of amicable connection seems to have remained over time.
But the focus in the sources then shifts, doesn't it? It shifts to how this past connection could potentially resurface now in light of Diddy's current legal situation.
That's right.
They bring up a specific, pretty infamous incident in New York City back in December 1999.
Ah, the club incident. Yeah, the material revisits the event where J-Lo and Diddy were present in a club when Jamal Shine Burrow discharged a firearm.
That's it. And the reports detail the outcomes at the time. Burrow was sentenced to 10 years in prison.
Oh.
Diddy received, I think it was a day of anger management.
Yeah, just a day.
And J-Lo was not charged in connection with the incident at all.
But the significant point raised in the sources now is that with these new accusations being leveled against Diddy, this old case might reopen. That's the phrasing used.
Right. The material mentions a victim from that 1999 incident who reportedly insists Diddy was actually responsible for what happened.
Wow.
And is apparently willing to take significant steps, like having the bullet removed from her face, potentially as evidence in a new legal context.
And the sources explicitly raise the possibility, given that a federal probe is mentioned in some reports, that J-Lo might be subpoenaed. They use some rather dramatic language here, stating, "Well, seems like Jenny from the block may become Jenny from the jail."
It's certainly provocative phrasing, as you said, definitely playing on her public persona.
Yeah.
But it highlights a crucial point drawn from the sources. Past events, past associations, even those that seemed resolved or where someone wasn't charged at the time,
Yeah.
they can absolutely be revisited years later within a new legal framework.
And potentially pulling former associates right back into the legal spotlight.
Exactly.
Okay, shifting now to another woman linked to Diddy in the material, this one described as an alleged romance, Cameron Diaz. And according to these reports, she is reportedly experiencing considerable distress right now.
Yes, the reports claim she is in full panic mode. That's the phrase used. Fearing that Diddy might potentially reveal, quote, sordid secrets from their time together.
Sordid secrets. Yikes. That phrasing itself, as it's presented in the sources, it really suggests a perceived reservoir of private, maybe damaging information that could have significant repercussions if it were to surface. And one insider quoted in the material fuels this idea, hinting, the word is he's got enough dirt to bring down half of Hollywood.
I mean, that insider claim, as it's relayed in the sources, paints a picture of Diddy potentially possessing perceived leverage and control through maybe a cache of sensitive information.
Yeah.
Potentially affecting many people in the industry. It's a big claim.
A very big claim. The reports delve into the alleged relationship's beginnings, describing how it supposedly started after they met at the Oscars back in 2008.
Okay.
Diddy was reportedly immediately smitten, and Cameron apparently found his charm hard to resist.
They even include a specific anecdote from the sources about Cameron reportedly choosing Diddy over Jude Law.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the material cites a story where Gwyneth Paltrow allegedly tried to set her up with Law, but Cameron was supposedly more interested in Diddy at that particular time. It adds a specific, detailed layer to the narrative presented.
The reports describe this connection as a hot and heavy fling, which they say reportedly helped her move past her 2011 split with Alex Rodriguez.
A-Rod, right. And the material provides details about their alleged public behavior, drawn from purported eyewitness accounts. Reports describe them getting cozy, sometimes even a little too cozy.
Mm-hmm.
There are mentions of messy hair and smeared makeup after alleged makeout sessions in public places.
Yet the sources highlight the striking contrast between this reported public behavior and the official stance taken at the time. Reps for both reportedly always insisted they were just friends.
Always just friends.
The material explicitly draws attention to this discrepancy, quoting an observation made after mentioning Cameron reportedly straddling him at a Golden Globes party. So, if they were just friends, they sure had a strange way of showing it.
The reports claim the dynamic was perceived as hot and stinky, with Cameron reportedly viewing it as casual fun, but Diddy seeming to take it perhaps more seriously.
And then there's this very specific anecdote included in the sources about Diddy reportedly displaying a controlling side during this alleged fling.
Oh.
It describes him allegedly pulling Cameron out of a party while she was in the middle of taking photos with fans, quoting him saying, "Let's go."
Wow.
A witness reportedly expressed surprise, commenting, "I've never seen him so controlling."
And the material connects this specific anecdote directly to the current allegations against Diddy, doesn't it? With the observation, guess this behavior isn't too surprising now.
Right.
This framing, based on the reports, suggests that this past behavior is now being reevaluated and seen through the lens of the very serious accusations he faces today.
The sources also include a rumor that this alleged affair cut Jen's heart like a knife, meaning J-Lo.
Oh, okay.
Noting the reported awkwardness given that J-Lo and Diddy reportedly remained friends over the years. It adds another layer of complexity to the intertwined relationships described.
It's also noted in the material that Diddy was allegedly dating Cassie Ventura on and off during this period.
Right, during the Diaz time.
It would reportedly present himself as single when, quote, a better offer came along. This, as presented in the reports, further complicates the picture of his romantic life at the time.
And finally, the sources share an anecdote from 2014, apparently at a dinner, where Diddy reportedly became sentimental, discussing Cameron's then-new relationship with Benji Madden.
Okay.
He's quoted as saying, "If I could turn back time, things would be different," and calling her the sexiest girl in the world. But the material adds a rather cynical take on that.
Which is...
But coming from Diddy, that's hardly a compliment, right?
This entire segment, based on these reports, it really raises critical questions about how past romantic entanglements, even alleged ones or seemingly casual ones, how they become intensely relevant when one party faces serious legal scrutiny What does the emphasis on the fear of sordid secrets, as highlighted in these sources, suggest about the perceived leverage or control that might exist within these past relationships?
It truly underscores the potential for private history to suddenly become public concern, especially when one individual is under this level of scrutiny. The perceived power dynamics related to potentially holding sensitive information seem really significant here, based on how these reports frame it.
Definitely.
Okay, let's shift gears now. Moving from romantic partners and party connections to individuals mentioned in the sources involving the wider entertainment industry and even the tech world. We'll start with Ashton Kutcher.
Ashton Kutcher, right. The material mentions him being spotted at Diddy's annual white party back in 2009, alongside his then-wife, Demi Moore.
Okay, so another instance of past party attendance drawing attention now.
Exactly. But the reports also include comments he made about a decade later on the popular show Hot Ones, where he spoke about his friendship with Diddy.
What did he say?
He said, "We became fast friends. We used to just hang out and watch football together." Pretty casual sounding.
But the sources note that when he was specifically asked about the parties during that same interview, his response was notably coy.
Coy how?
He reportedly said, "I have a lot I can't disclose. I can't disclose that one either."
That's certainly intriguing ambiguity, as reported by these sources, isn't it? It leaves a lot of room for interpretation, for speculation about what exactly he might have meant by can't disclose.
Yeah, what couldn't he disclose? And that public coyness is directly contrasted in the material with strong denials reportedly coming from insiders close to Kutcher.
Okay, so denials are coming out too.
Yes. The sources quote one such insider labeling the rumors connecting him to anything problematic as absolutely ridiculous and false, and strongly emphasizing that he has had zero involvement in any alleged misconduct.
Got it.
Another source, quoted directly in the material, stated very firmly, he doesn't belong in this conversation.
Pretty blunt.
And a third added that Ashton has only seen Diddy at a handful of social and business events, all documented by the media, really trying to downplay any deeper connection.
So you have Kutcher's intriguing public non-denial, or maybe non-comment, set against these very firm denials from sources claiming to be close to him. And what's particularly striking is that the material immediately follows this discussion by stating, "But each rumor has its truth in it."
Ooh. That phrase, positioned right after the discussion about Kutcher and these conflicting accounts, is quite loaded, according to how the sources present it.
Yeah, it feels loaded.
It almost implies that despite the strong denials, the existence of the rumor itself, perhaps fueled by that coy interview response,
Right.
suggests there might be something more beneath the surface, or at least something that merits continued attention in the public eye, according to this perspective.
It certainly speaks to how different public accounts or strategically ambiguous statements, as presented in these reports, can continue to fuel speculation, regardless of how strenuously denials are issued by others. It keeps the conversation going.
Definitely. Speaking of business connections, the sources bring up another very prominent name who has had dealings with Diddy, the Amazon founder, Jeff Bezos.
Bezos, yeah. The Amazon mogul. The connection highlighted in the material is a business one. Amazon Studios reportedly assisted in promoting Diddy's media platform, Revolt TV.
Okay, so a business deal. And while, as the reports note, this appeared to be a standard business move at the time, people are now, in light of the serious allegations against Diddy, reportedly questioning whether Bezos was aware of Diddy's more controversial activities.
Right. The sources directly pose the central question that has reportedly emerged. Did Bezos know what was really going on behind the scenes, or was he just in it for the business side of things?
And how do they answer that?
Well, they conclude this point with, "It's hard to say, but the questions are piling up," indicating that this business link is now under retrospective scrutiny. They don't offer an answer.
So this really demonstrates how seemingly standard business dealings, which were probably unremarkable at the time they occurred,
Right.
can come under intense public questioning when one party involved faces serious allegations later down the line.
It makes you consider the complexity of due diligence, doesn't it? Particularly when entering into partnerships with highly public figures.
Totally.
What is the realistic expectation or capacity to know everything about a partner's private life? And at what point do business associations themselves become grounds for public suspicion simply due to the other party's alleged actions as framed by these reports?
Yeah.
It's tricky.
Very tricky. And while we're looking at billionaire connections, the sources mention another name that has generated significant buzz, particularly on social media, Elon Musk.
Musk, right. The material points to Diddy's alleged $10 million investment in Musk's platform, X.
Okay.
The timing of this investment is highlighted, reportedly occurring around the time when some of the serious allegations against Diddy were becoming more widely known.
And the sources even include a specific, pretty intriguing detail from the new book, Character Limit.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
According to that book, Musk reportedly bragged about his friendship with Diddy to the CEO of Revolt. Yeah, saying, I don't know if you know this, but Puff is an investor in Twitter. You know, he's a good friend of mine. We text a lot. And the sources add the reaction. Looks like they're closer than we thought, huh?
That quote, as reported in the sources, does suggest a level of personal connection beyond just, a straightforward financial investment.
Seems like it.
The reports provide context, noting Diddy had stepped down from Revolt shortly before Cassie Ventura filed her lawsuit and was confirmed as an ex-investor around the same general time frame, joining other prominent investors like Jack Dorsey and Larry Ellison.
And just to reinforce that element of personal connection, the material reminds us that Musk and Diddy were publicly spotted hanging out together at a Dave Chappelle show back in 2022.
Okay, but here's where the narrative presented in the sources takes another turn and gets, more complex.
How so?
More recently, Musk reportedly stirred the pot by sharing a report outlining some of the claims against Diddy and publicly asking on his platform X how many people in music and entertainment knew about this.
Okay, so he weighed in publicly.
He did. And according to the sources, this public question prompted a pretty quick response from others online. Music critic Anthony Fantano reportedly clapped back.
Okay.
By pointing out an infamous photo of Musk himself with Ghislaine Maxwell.
Oh, boy.
The material describes this exchange with the simple observation, talk about awkward.
Yeah, that is awkward. This dynamic exchange, as reported in the sources, it vividly illustrates the complexities public figures face when commenting on the alleged misdeeds of others.
Definitely.
Particularly when they themselves have faced scrutiny over their own associations or past actions. It's like throwing stones in glass houses, maybe.
Something like that. It really highlights how social media amplifies these connections, turns public comments into immediate challenges, and quickly brings up counterpoints or accusations that might be seen as whataboutism.
Right. What about your photo?
Exactly. It creates a situation where past associations, even if brief or seemingly innocent at the time, can be instantly brought up and used in the present public discourse.
And where figures attempting to weigh in on other situations can find the spotlight rapidly turned back onto themselves according to the narrative presented in these reports. It's a minefield.
It certainly appears that way.
Okay, now we move to a figure who, according to the sources we have in front of us, has been pulled into this situation in a very direct and, frankly, very serious way, named as a defendant in a civil lawsuit alongside Diddy, Jay-Z.
Yes, the sources state clearly that Jay-Z, whose legal name is Sean Carter, has been, quote, pulled into the storm, accused in a civil lawsuit of something described as incredibly serious.
The reports detail the origins and the progression of this particular lawsuit. It was initially filed back in October, naming Diddy along with two redacted names, John Doe names, basically.
Right.
But significantly, an amended complaint was reportedly filed just days ago, specifically adding Sean Carter, Jay-Z, as a named defendant.
And the core allegation, as described in the sources based on that lawsuit filing, concerns a party that allegedly took place after the 2000 MTV Video Music Awards.
Okay, way back in 2000.
Yeah. The plaintiff in the suit is identified as Jane Doe, who claims she was allegedly just 13 years old at the time of the alleged incident. She's now in her mid-30s.
Wow, 13. The sources lay out the specific claims made within the lawsuit. Jane Doe alleges she was approaching limousines outside Radio City Music Hall during the VMAs that year. A driver reportedly claiming to work for Diddy allegedly told her she fit what Diddy was looking for. She claimed she was then invited to an after-party and instructed to return to the car later.
At the party, the material states, Jane Doe claims she was asked to sign a non-disclosure agreement.
An NDA at 13.
That's what's claimed. And was given a drink that caused her to feel drugged. The lawsuit, as described in the sources, then makes the extremely serious allegation that Combs and Carter took turns assaulting her at a private residence.
Oh my goodness.
The complaint also reportedly claims that an unnamed female celebrity was watching during this alleged incident.
Okay, it is absolutely critical as we relay these incredibly sensitive details from the source material to reiterate, that we are strictly presenting the claims made within the civil lawsuit as they are described in the reports you've provided.
Absolutely crucial.
We are not in any way endorsing these claims, simply reporting what the sources say is alleged in the legal document that has now been filed.
Absolutely. And the sources also provide Jay-Z's response to these grave allegations, which was, as you might expect, a very strong and public denial issued via Roc Nation's official X account.
Okay.
He reportedly characterized the entire lawsuit as a blackmail attempt.
The reports detail his forceful response. He reportedly called the allegations so heinous and directly challenged the plaintiff's attorney, imploring that a criminal complaint be filed instead of pursuing a civil lawsuit.
Right.
He reportedly argued that whoever committed such a crime should be locked away.
He also reportedly directly accused the plaintiff's attorney, whose name is Tony Busby, of exploiting the legal system and the current public scrutiny around Diddy for personal financial gain. Pretty direct accusation.
Very direct. And the sources quote Jay-Z stating his absolute refusal to settle this case. He reportedly argued that Busby miscalculated, believing that the intense public scrutiny would pressure him into settling. Instead, Jay-Z reportedly stated it had the opposite effect, making him determined to fight back and, in his words, reported by the sources, expose Busby for the fraud you are.
Wow, strong words. He also reportedly put a strong emphasis on his background and personal values in his statement, as relayed in the sources. Something like, "I'm not from your world. I'm a young man who made it out of the projects of Brooklyn. We don't play these types of games. We have strict codes and honor. We protect children. You exploit people for personal gain."
A very powerful statement trying to draw a clear line based on character and background. The sources also include the response from Diddy's legal team in this specific context, who also issued a denial of the allegations in this lawsuit. They reportedly called them shameless publicity stunts aimed solely at extracting money.
Okay.
The reports quote their statement, "The truth will prevail. Mr. Combs never sexually assaulted or trafficked anyone, man, woman, adult, or minor."
And finally, the sources include the counterstatement reportedly issued by the plaintiff's attorney, Tony Busby, who simply stated, "The pleading speaks for itself. This is a very serious matter that will be litigated in court," keeping it brief.
Right. The reports mention Jane Doe claiming she suffered irreparable trauma and is seeking unspecified damages. They also note Busby's claim that he represents over 100 individuals who have accused Diddy of misconduct across various cases.
Again, just to be absolutely crystal clear for you listening, our discussion is strictly presenting the claims made in this civil lawsuit and the reported responses to those claims, based solely on the source material provided for this deep dive. This is a legal process that is unfolding, and these reports reflect the initial public details drawn from legal filings and the immediate reactions to them.
This section, though, it dramatically illustrates how legal documents themselves, once filed, can instantly become part of the public discourse, especially when involving such high-profile individuals.
No kidding.
And it shows, based on these reports, how figures like Jay-Z choose to use their public platforms to issue incredibly strong, detailed denials in response to such severe accusations.
It highlights those parallel battles that can occur in these situations, doesn't it? You have the formal legal proceedings playing out in court,
Right.
and then the simultaneous, often very heavily publicized battle playing out in the court of public opinion, significantly influenced by what gets reported from legal filings and the powerful public responses to them.
Wow. We have certainly covered a vast amount of information in this deep dive, a lot to process.
We really have. We've explored the various individuals mentioned in the reports and notes you provided, all in the context of the ongoing legal situation involving Sean Diddy Combs.
That included looking at Leonardo DiCaprio, mentioned due to those resurfaced photos from past party attendance and the resulting public speculation, Jennifer Lopez, whose former relationship with Diddy and presence at a past incident are now being brought up as potentially relevant in the current legal climate, and Cameron Diaz, linked by that alleged past romance and reportedly concerned about potential revelations of sordid secrets.
We also examined connections in entertainment and the tech world, including Ashton Kutcher's notably coy public comments about past parties, contrasted with those strong denials from sources close to him.
Right.
Jeff Bezos' business link through Revolt TV and the questions that association now seems to raise.
Yeah.
And Elon Musk's reported investment in X and friendship with Diddy, as well as that complex social media exchange that followed his public comments.
And finally, we delved into the very serious situation involving Jay-Z, who is now directly named as a defendant in a civil lawsuit containing extremely grave allegations and whose strong public denial is extensively detailed in the sources we looked at.
And it bears repeating one last time. This exploration was built entirely upon the source material provided for this deep dive, presenting the claims, the reports, and the counterclaims as they appear in that material. Nothing more, nothing less.
Absolutely. Considering the sheer variety of connections highlighted in these sources, I mean, ranging from seemingly casual party attendance decades ago to past romantic relationships, significant business dealings, and even direct inclusion in a civil lawsuit with allegations this severe. It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it?
It does.
Where exactly is the line drawn between simply knowing someone, associating with them, and potentially being implicated, even just in perception, in their alleged actions?
And in an era where old photos can instantly resurface, where allegations spread like wildfire online, can that line between association and implication ever truly be clear in the court of public opinion?
That's certainly something for you to consider as this story continues to unfold. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the sources.